All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope your week is going well and that you're ready to engage with our presenters today for discussions around funding in early childhood. I'm Nicole. I'm from the marketing team here at Hatch. Since 1984, Hatch Early Learning has worked to transform the lives of young children and help prepare them with the essential skills needed to succeed both in school and beyond. We believe in the power of teachers, and our learning tools help extend teachers' reach through purposeful practice and data stories. For today's discussion, our goals are to connect you with some of our valued customers and leaders in early childhood programs around the topic of funding, and specifically how you can maximize your funding to achieve your individual program goals. We do know that we have many different audiences represented, so please consider that factor when listening to questions. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask them by typing them in the Q&A box. Some of our Head Start friends are facing rapidly approaching deadlines, and our public school friends have differing deadlines. Each of your questions are valid. We want to reiterate that. We hope we can address them all, but please know if we don't address a question in conversation here, we will share out a document compiling all of the questions with answers and helpful links as a reference afterwards. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. Barb, would you like to go first?
Hi, everyone. I'm Barb Dolejs. I'm the Assistant Director of Education and Quality Improvement for Catholic Charities Early Learning Programs in Cleveland, Ohio. We are a Head Start program. I run 6 Head Start centers. I came to Head Start from, I taught at Cleveland State University, and I was a part of one of the first National Early Reading First grants. And from there, we partnered with the Head Start. I fell in love with Head Start. Now I'm a Head Start lifer. So that's pretty much me. Did you want to go next, Becca?
Okay, yes. Hi, everyone. My name's Becca Carter. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so honored to be on a panel with Barbara and Kathy. So thank you, Nicole and Hatch, for having me. I am the pre-K instructional specialist for Virginia Beach City Public Schools. It's taken me a long time to get here. I started as a pre-K assistant with a worker's permit at 15 years old, and now I'm the pre-K instructional specialist for my city. So it's been a long journey, and I've learned a lot along the way, and I am a lifelong learner, so I continue to learn as I go. I started in pre-K, as I said. I taught first grade for 8 years, and then I became an instructional technology specialist because I wanted a challenge. Little did I know that right after I became an instructional technology specialist at a pre-K through first grade school, that all the schools would shut down. So I was responsible for getting 600 4, 5, and 6-year-olds onto virtual learning, and that was a great experience. And after that, I was ready for another change. So I was promoted to the pre-K instructional specialist in Virginia Beach. I'm very proud of the program that we have. We serve this year 918 students in 51 classes at 27 different schools with about 18 kids per class. And every year we continue to expand. And we recruit our students based on different factors, and students with the greatest need get placed first. And I'm happy to talk to you about some of my knowledge of funding today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathy Hollowell-Makle. I'm the Executive Director at the District of Columbia Association for the Education of Young Children. We are the DC affiliate of the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And prior to my role here at DCAEYC, I was an early educator for 22 years in the local public schools. So I am very familiar with Hatch products. I think they are a great asset to any classroom. They definitely help with, I always say that, technology is the third teacher in the classroom. So they always have a tendency to help with not only engagement and learning, but it also helps around teacher workload and classroom management. Here in the district, specifically over the last 3 years, my focus and my passion has been around the ECE workforce, mostly around compensation, because we firmly believe that you can't take care of other people's children if you can't take care of your own by earning a livable wage. So I've advocated along with other members and the ECE community here, specifically around compensation. And I'm proud to announce that there was a compensation bill passed here in 2021 that intends to pay ECE teachers that are working in community-based and home-based products on parity with public schools. And so we are still rolling that out. We are in the infancy stages of that, of rolling that compensation out. And so now we are looking more holistically at the compensation to include health benefits and other benefits that go along with public school teachers. And we hope to bring that to ECE programs that are in community-based and home-based programs. So I'm really interested in questions that you all might have, and I'm also very excited to share a little bit about what I do know, and it's always a pleasure to be with other ladies who will be able to fill in the gaps of something that I might not know. So I appreciate that, and it's just good to be here this afternoon.
Thank you so much for that intro, all of you. We are so proud to have you all here and thankful for your expertise. Kathy, you touched on this a little bit, but I do, before we dive into the funding, I'd love to share with our audience, if each of you could talk a little bit about your personal experiences with Hatch in your programs, but also any beliefs that you all have about technology in the classroom and how it can enhance everything that you all do.
I'd be happy to start with that. In my agency, we have been utilizing Hatch products since I started with Catholic Charities in 2013, and it wasn't long after that we did purchase some Hatch products because, and I feel it's important to have appropriate technology in classrooms, which is to say that just having a computer in a classroom that is not being well utilized or directed is not helpful. What we do have the Hatch tablets in all of our pre-K rooms. We just bought 4 new Hatch boards. We had the original Hatch interactive boards, and I'm excited for the updates for the We Play Smart tables because my teachers love the We Play Smart tables. If for those of you who don't know what they are, it's a collaborative play table that records children's conversations and what they're doing as they collaboratively play together. And my disabilities and mental health coordinator is very excited about that also. I think that one thing that really why I go after funding to make sure that I continue to have these things in my classrooms is it's very valuable to me that we use creative curriculum and our Hatch tablets upload into our creative curriculum, and it gives me the ability also to pull out creative curriculum data and Hatch data and look at subjective versus objective and use that to address teacher training needs and needs in my classroom that I find to be very helpful.
Okay, I'll jump in. I think in terms of, we live in a digital and technologically advanced society. And so we owe it to children to have some interactive media that they can interact with. But in addition to interacting with it, just for keeping up with the time, so to speak, technology can be a real useful tool when we think about developmentally appropriate practice, because developmentally appropriate practice really concentrates on the individuality of the child, right? So what might be appropriate for one child might not be appropriate for another child. And so when you are using online platforms or certain technology in the classroom, it allows that child to move at their own pace. And it also empowers them, right? It empowers them that they can move at their own pace, they can figure things out, and that they can be proactive in their learning. And so I think it's just very important, but it's also a useful tool for the teacher as well. Because, and I think Barbara spoke to a little bit about this. I know here in the district, our Hatch users are able to sync information right into the goal assessments. And so that helps with teacher workload, that teachers can kind of analyze that sync data and be able to record those benchmarks. And so it becomes a little less load for the teacher. And anytime it's a less load for a teacher, that benefits children, right? So it gives more attention to the child. It allows teachers to plan more intentionally and to have more meaningful interactions with their students.
Well, you know, and I have to add to that, in Head Start, we're big on parent engagement. Hatch released Ignite to our parents during COVID, and a lot of our parents utilized Ignite, and they still do at home. And so our teachers will even talk to our parents about where they are on the tablets versus what they can do at home, and just have something. For some parents, it's a little more appropriate. It's a more appropriate activity to be doing on a screen, because we know kids can figure out how to unlock something and see something they don't need to see at a very young age.
So I just want to echo everything that both of the ladies said and just add my own little spin on it. So I'm definitely, first and foremost, a huge proponent of technology use in early education. And I know that a lot of people are not, and they don't believe that technology has a place in a pre-K setting. But it is a subject that I could talk about for hours, because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And I believe that if it's done properly, kind of like what Kathy said, with paying attention to the developmentally appropriate strategies that we know, then it is something that can really be a huge life changer for teachers and students. I believe that technology should be used to enhance what we're doing, not to replace what we're doing. And it can be leveraged to make the teachers' lives easier, as Kathy said. I view Hatch or Ignite as like a teacher assistant, right? So I'm going to do the instruction, and I'm obviously going to get some really good data working one-on-one with my students or in small groups with my students. But if there's something that they need a little bit of extra practice on, I can rely on Ignite to give them that extra practice, which is really nice. It also gives me an added level of data and reporting that I have on my students. All good teachers know that the interactions are what are the most important, and that's where you're really going to learn about what your students know. But you do have this access to all these reports telling you how they're doing on the app as well, which is great. If technology is used in the classroom properly, it's going to promote the 5 C's of learning, which are collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, citizenship, and communication. I remembered earlier when I was going over this, I couldn't remember the 5th C and I panicked. But those are all really important skills that our students need for the future, because we want future ready students. Now, thinking about the future, computer science has the highest demand out of any other occupation. And we're preparing our students for a future in a world that doesn't even exist yet. So not only is technology their world, but it's going to continue to be their world. And even though they're young, we still are thinking about graduation and future ready with our students. So we know that we cannot leave technology out of the equation. So in my role as the instructional specialist, it's my job to find instructional resources for us to spend our funding on. And so that's what brought me to Hatch. This is my first year using Hatch in Virginia Beach. We do have a couple other apps that we're using in addition to Ignite, and we decided to pilot it this year because it had some features that the other apps that we are currently using did not have. So we chose 6 teachers to try out Hatch in our district this year with their students, and we have been collecting data and talking with the teachers and having meetings and observing the students to make sure that it is a good fit for us, which is something that's really important to do when you are responsible for any kind of funds.
Thank you all for that. I love that you all naturally move to this landscape of what technology looks like now in the classroom, but prepping kiddos for the future, right? Because that's ultimately what we want to do, is help ensure everybody is successful, not now, but also going forward, right? So let's look at that landscape a little bit in terms of funding and kind of acknowledge where we are right now with funding challenges, opportunities in the early childhood space. What challenges and opportunities are you seeing in your individual areas and maybe just across the board?
I can go first because I'm coming from public school, and I think it might be a little different perspective than my other friends here. So in Virginia Beach, our pre-K is funded through a combination of Title I funds, VPI, which is the Virginia Preschool Initiative, and local funding. So for pre-K in Virginia Beach, it's imperative that we ensure that we have funds to sustain the quality curriculum and family engagement supports that we provide year after year for our students. And luckily for our city, our first goal and our strategic plan for all of Virginia Beach City Public Schools includes the expansion of early childhood opportunities. So therefore, our whole district is committed to continuing to grow our program each year, which is very important. Just to talk about a little bit of a breakdown of our funding, we use our VPI funds that we get from the state to fund the salaries and benefits for all teachers and TAs. Our local funds are a portion of that goes towards the requirement that they need to put towards our salary and benefits for teachers and TAs. And then we also use local funds for materials that are not allowable by Title I, such as t-shirts for our students, emergency snacks, different things like that. And then our Title I funding supports the funding of staff, field trips, instructional supplies, professional development costs, technology programs, one-to-one devices that we have for our students, and any family engagement supplies or opportunities that we have. So pretty much to sum it up, we do have multiple funding sources, the biggest chunk coming from Title I, and that in my role, it's my job to make sure that we are using those funds to purchase instructional resources that support the goals of our division.
So for me, being a Head Start, we have layers of funding. When I first started in Head Start, we generally, our only real funding source was a federal Head Start grant. Head Start is a holistic anti-poverty grant that encompasses serving the child and the whole family. But things change, and that wasn't enough to do the kind of quality program we wanted, and we found we had to diversify. So currently we accept publicly funded childcare dollars through the county. We have QIRS money, which is a quality, every state has their own level of quality rating something system. I forget what, we're so used to using the acronyms, it's terrible in early childhood. But we have funds that we have that way. That ended up, originally we got big pots of money for quality from those funds, and as they went on, it changed, and then they became attached to the percentage of monies you got for publicly funded childcare, which is when we had to switch some of our program model to go after those publicly funded childcare dollars. On top of which, we have some state early childhood expansion grant funding, and we have a contract with our county that we were awarded. You have to write for every 3 years based on being a high quality centers. It's additional dollars through corporate grants and some other funding that we get that are for quality and funds. We use that to support increasing our staff salaries, but those county grant dollars through our Invest in Children funds changed right in the middle of COVID. And so we used to have 3 teachers in a classroom, and we had to back down to 2 teachers in a classroom with a floater teacher between, because those funds went from being attendance driven, an amount per child per day, to a set amount annually per classroom. So we've had to be pretty flexible and on it to look at finding additional sources for funding or adapting to funding as it changes over time. Then we had COVID and everybody dumped piles of money on you, and it all had to be spent in certain kind of ways. But and you want to address, we all know that early childhood educators are the bottom 10% in pay for all professions. If you didn't know, you should. I mean, we're highly politically dependent, and it's a travesty that our youngest are, we ask people to make some of the worst money in all professions for degrees that we want better credentials for. And so we've had to find ways to get creative with our funding also to raise compensation. Unfortunately, all the COVID money is not ongoing money and does not sustain salaries over time. So while we've been able to buy a lot of supplemental things for our centers and for our children, those dollars don't help. We might have gave bonuses now, but it doesn't help for the long run to attract and keep educators in early childhood to care for our children. I will say that we tried to be very mindful and thoughtful of how we spent our COVID dollars, but there are always funding things coming up, because as we see this technology roll out, curriculums have gone online, everything's gone online. So you used to buy a book and you had the book in the classroom, and that's how you taught your teachers the curriculum, and that's how and now it's online, and it takes an annual subscription, or it's a subscription over 3 to 5 years, or so all these things are going up, which makes it necessary to start looking for other supplemental funds. And that's something we do. We're Head Start. We always look for supplemental funds. It's kind of ingrained in you from I come from a very Head Start perspective. We get the job done. That's what we do. So, but it is, with inflation and everything else that's been going on, I see a lot of programs perhaps being in real trouble once these COVID supplemental funds go away.
And I'll just piggyback a little bit on what Barbara was saying, that, you know, we've had an influx here in the district, specifically around COVID funding. However, parents have chosen to not re-enroll their children at a rate that helps the business it keeps the business sustainable. And so what a lot of programs have had to do with those influx of dollars is to use it specifically to keep the business running, to continue to pay staff, to continue to pay all of their operational costs, in addition to dealing with the crazy rate of inflation right now. We saw a little bit of that inflation at the beginning of COVID, where a box or a case of gloves went from $36 to about $96, and so forth and so on, with cleaning supplies. And so there hasn't been a lot of additional funding to buy the supplemental materials that really help to provide a really engaging and high quality experience for kids. So some of what we've done here in the district is to really advocate for some additional dollars, especially for programs who participate in the subsidy program here. So if those children are non-attending, we've advocated for those dollars to be put into the program as an emergency fund. So in other words, if a child is not attending and they're subsidy dollars are there and being unused, that they should go to the program as emergency assistance. And that unfortunately still has been used to just sustain the business. And so some funding that programs have used has really come from the philanthropic community here in the city. And so the philanthropic community has been a very integral part in closing some of those gaps around funding so that programs can stay open, that they can be prepared and waiting for children, in addition to being able to provide a little bit extra in the way of learning materials. So it's still a very, very tenuous situation, but I think, you know, as we've seen, as we are now post-COVID, so to speak, we are seeing an uptick in enrollment, but we are still not at the levels where we were pre-COVID as far as parents re-enrolling their children, and that's really been a struggle.
So with these winnowing funds at times and the, you know, add on inflation and add on, you know, varying learning needs that you guys are receiving in your programs, how are you prioritizing budget items and funding and where to earmark in certain areas?
Well, so for us, every funding stream you get, every grant you get comes with, you know, different priorities and ways you can spend the money, when you spend the money, how you spend the money. So there was a live question in the chat about, do you present any documentation or reports from Hatch in order to get approved? I have used Hatch reports in writing grants. I have used more so when we look at our family engagement, we've used reports on like how much we got from parents from Ignite in Hatch. We have used those. I would also say that when we're looking at this funding and things go away and things come back, I do a lot of work with the budget. So I have to look at, can I get it in time? Because let's not forget, during COVID, you couldn't get stuff. And being that I work for Catholic Charities and our Head Start is under the auspice of Catholic Charities, which is then under the auspice of the diocese, so the Catholic diocese. So we have many layers of regulations on how and when we spend our money. When you can't find a way to pay for it out of one, you look for the others, and you have to really know your program and be able to articulate how it fits in those categories. And if you want to know how you get creative in funding, when it fits in none of those categories, you go find a grant or an agency to partner with, or a company, or you call your councilman and invite them to see your program, or your congressman, because they're all connected to a lot of people. And when you get them in to see the wonderful things you do and what you need, they can help put you in touch with grants and people and other connections in your community. But you have to get yourself out there. It does require some networking, and I know everybody's exhausted, but we look for other grants, big or small, and you have to look for ones that allow for the kind of funding you want. When you have something like Hatch that takes, as Kathy said, a lot of the workload off the teachers and helps support them, and you can use it with it. Ignite hits several markers for me. It hits parent engagement because parents can do it at home, and it provides a common literacy for parents and teachers to talk about, because parents are playing the game with their children at home, so they can talk about how their children do it with their teacher. It opens that window. It hits on technology in the classroom, and it makes your staff happy. I have a union staff. If we got rid of Hatch, I'd probably be on a stake in the parking lot, because they greatly value what it adds to their ongoing assessment.
I love that you mentioned using those reports and just being able to print them and attach them to grants, because that's ultimately the hope, right? Is that we're giving you actionable data that you can use and carry it further. So I'm glad to hear that that's working. Any recommendations, Becca or Kathy, from you both, just in terms of those winnowing funds and inflation, in terms of priorities for individual programs and goals? How would you recommend prioritizing? Any wins that you have seen that you can share?
So, in my city, one of the, a couple of the big things that we saw after COVID, for a need for us was that this learning loss. That's something that kept saying over and over again. So it didn't really apply to our students coming into pre-K, but it applied to our students that were in pre-K the year we shut down and the following year when we were shut down, for some of the time as well. So we did use some of the extra funding that we got during that time to expand our summer learning opportunities for students. So we were able to create a summer learning camp for our students in pre-K with the greatest need. That was a 4-week program, and really kind of provide a little bit of extra learning for them. And then another thing that came to light was the SEL needs. And I'm sure that that was not just me. We're still seeing the effects of that, even with the students in pre-K this year, as we lovingly call them COVID babies. A lot of them were not in school at all. So SEL resources are another big priority for us when we're looking at funding and different resources, which is actually why Ignite was appealing to us and why we wanted to try it, because we were currently using one app for mathematics and one app for literacy and nothing for SEL. And so the fact that Ignite had literacy, mathematics, and SEL all in one was something that was really appealing to us due to the needs of our students after the pandemic.
I think, well, to make the dollar stretch a little bit further, independent programs here decided to partner together around bulk purchasing and around shared services. And so that has helped to stretch the dollar just a little bit further in terms of getting what they need at a reduced rate, but also kind of sharing some of the responsibility for sourcing it as well. I think as dollars dwindle, like Barb said, that people will definitely become more creative and starting to really seek funding outside of the traditional sources of funding. So it's still a developing situation, and so we're keeping a close eye on how folks are navigating these challenging times. And then nobody's serving eggs anymore, of course, because eggs are, $10.
Yeah.
But $10 a carton, right? So folks are making really intentional decisions around products and materials that they're sourcing for their programs.
So you're trying to tell me they're spending money on chickens?
Yeah.
We have a garden program. It's not unheard of.
Right.
Oh, man. Okay, well, if our audience were to ask you your number one go-to in terms of support for funding, right? If somebody were to say, all right, where's your first stop that is not, the typical go-to Google search, what would you recommend?
I regularly, I get emails from, there's a site called Candide, and they are a grant publishing. They will send out to you emails of what grants coming up for this or that. If you put out a profile, and Nicole, I think I had said, I'll send you that. The other thing I'll say is, like, my teachers we're Head Start, we get it done, right? So we have Amazon Smiles accounts where teachers put up things they want donations for. There's many things like that. My teachers will post stuff on Facebook when they need, they'll do that. We've never had a car wash yet, but I'm not saying I wouldn't. But and there are certain it doesn't hurt for you to, in whatever neighborhood or community you are in, if you need money for something, to check out the community involvement web pages of the major industries. Everybody thinks Target and Walmart, but for instance, in Cleveland, there's Highland Software. There's big employers in every community, and it may not be someone, if you're a smaller agency or an individual childcare, that might not be somebody you thought to look at. But most corporations have a community giving page, so it doesn't hurt to look and ask, meet somebody, and network.
And I have a personal story I'll share, sort of Barbara speaking about. When I was still in the classroom, we had a company around the corner from our school who donated all of the copy paper for the entire year. And so because this donation of the copy paper for the entire year, that freed up, I mean, this was a school of about 400 kids at the time, and it freed up something like $15,000 out of our budget to be able to use it elsewhere. But excuse me, one of the go-tos, I have two go-tos. One is Donors Choose, that will easily fund if a teacher posts a project. I think they call them projects, and they are specifically asking for books, technology, assistive devices. It can easily be funded within a day by just people looking to fund things. And we've been really lucky here in the district that one philanthropic partner to early education has been going through and regularly funding teachers' projects, like just regularly once a month, going through, and every teacher who has a project that's early childhood, they've been funding it. And then second of all, I'd like to put out, there is most organizations, there's an organization usually in every region, but it's called the Regional Association of Grant Makers. And there's an application that you can just you can fill out, upload to their site. And if there's a funder that aligns with priorities aligned to their needs, they will match them. And I mean, it's a little bit, it's some additional work after you get the initial application, because it has to be fine-tuned to the funder. But it's an easy way to just have to connect with money that's just sitting out there.
I also was going to bring up Donors Choose. That is just such a wonderful program for teachers and for the students, because it involves like the students writing thank you letters and pictures. So it's really nice for everybody, the people who are donating and the people who are receiving. I have a couple Donors Choose tips that I've shared with teachers over the years. If you share your project on the Nextdoor app of the neighborhood of the school that you're in, a lot of people that don't even have children but live in the neighborhood would donate to it. And then there's certain people that just always will buy projects, and one of them is Craig Newmark. He's the founder of Craigslist. And if you just tag him on Twitter and post your project, he probably will pay for it. So there's a lot of little tips like that out there. A lot of people, they make their project and just share it on Facebook, and then their friends share it. And like Kathy was saying, they get funded like that. And it's really quick. You get your supplies like within a couple of weeks of it getting funded. So that's a really good partner, or good program to suggest for teachers who are looking for supplies for their classrooms. In my district, we don't really have to seek any outside funding just because of the different funding sources we're getting. But at times we do collaborate with community organizations to provide services for our students on things that we cannot buy with our Title I money. So for example, in Virginia Beach, we have a reading bus, and we can pay for the staffing, the gas, and the books and all that stuff, but we can't pay for food or anything like that for the students. So when we go out with our reading bus, the police department will meet us out there, and they'll bring food and they'll set up a table, and the health department will come out and set up a table. And then we've even had the mobile food bank come out as well. So all of us are working together, not really so much for funding, but just in collaboration to provide services for our students.
when Kathy, your story reminded me of something that I don't know why I didn't think of this. Right before COVID, and during COVID, we happened to partner with and were contacted by someone who owned several warehouses. So he has many clients, and some of the clients had online businesses and they went out of business and they want to get rid of the stuff. Well, some of the, we got 4,000 square feet of craft materials just because my disability coordinator and some of my site administrators and myself went to the warehouse, had our facilities guy pull up with as many trucks as he could get people to drive, and we filled them. And we made a relationship with this person who has these 2 warehouses. And after, like, they give us pumpkins when there's too many pumpkins for Home Depot's pumpkin sale or whatever when people are getting rid of things that they have stored there, those craft supplies made all of the take-home bags that we gave out weekly during the shutdown. During COVID, they filled take-home bags every week for 600 kids. I mean, every kid got a bag every week. We could do it. Not every week, every month. We could do it, but I mean, it had a lot in it. I still have a wall of tissue paper in my education storage room that teachers asked for from just this business. That, so to be aware of industries and think a little outside the box, again, when we talk about creative funding, that saved us. I still have a bunch of supplies from that in my storeroom, and it was just getting to know someone in the neighborhood. They had a carnival vendor that went out of business. He wanted to get rid of all of that. We had a 3,000 square foot room full of stuffed animals that we gave away to our families for Christmas. I mean, it's just crazy. But think about things like warehouse businesses near you. Most of my centers happen to be in we're a low income program, so we're not in wealthy neighborhoods, but there's industry around you. Look at what's around you and think of talk to people. You'll be surprised, because like I said, knowing this one guy who owns several warehouses is an ongoing thing, that he'll just call us like, I got to get rid of 40 truckloads of pumpkins. Do you guys want pumpkins? And all our families we get sick of pumpkins, trust me. But we get the hay and the other stuff that comes with it. So those are things to think about.
I love that encouragement to get creative and think outside the box, because, you know, if you don't ask for it, you can't find it. But if you do ask for it, chances are you might get told yes somewhere along the way. And I think that's so encouraging and definitely what everybody in education needs to hear these days. So on that note, I'd love to know before we do get there, we do have one question that just popped in. I really want Ignite for my district, but we'll need to get creative. Is there anything specific I should request or mention to help? I'm wondering if this might hit on the lines of compliance or notions there.
Being that you're a school district, Becca could probably better answer, but I find Hatch can be very helpful with giving you statistics of success stories and things from other customers that can really help in making the request. And I always find that using data and talking about how you're going to have subjective versus objective and what you can do with the data to show quality improvement is always helpful.
So I definitely agree with that. And I was in the same situation where I really wanted to get it for my district. And so what I did is I kind of like wrote up a proposal about it for the people above me. And I made a plan and I explained the different benefits of it, how it was personalized learning that was differentiated for the needs of each individual child, the reports that were included in it, the different components that are included in it, and how it would support our student goals that we have. You might look to see if there's a crosswalk with Hatch for your specific program to see how it's related and show them how it would supplement your program. And then if they're still not on board, you could do what I did and ask if you could pilot it in a few rooms. Because that's what I did is I didn't start it off in all 51 classes. I just started it off in 9 classes. That way, we really got to see if it was effective and if it was a good purchase, because we have to be responsible stewards of all this money. And so we really went through like a whole process to ensure we are making the right decision with that.
And
I hope that helps.
don't forget that so I can tell you Hatch is aligned to the state standards in Ohio, and it's also aligned to our curriculum, and it's also aligned to our screening tools, because we have crosswalks for all of that so that we work smarter, not harder. And I will say, don't forget that there is that parent engagement piece and the fact that parents can do it at home.
Absolutely. And please do check our website, because all state alignments and curricular alignments can be found there as well. And Kathy, I'm sorry, I just hopped in. What were you about to say?
I was going to say, whoever whatever entity decides your budget in your district, that this is always something that you could advocate for, specifically to have a set aside budget line item for technology, for pre-K, for kindergarten, so forth and so on. I was just gonna say, advocate, advocate, advocate.
I do see there's one other question just about more examples of what you did when you said you had to get creative to find funding. Any other examples that we may not have covered? Okay, with that, I do want to give you all the opportunity to, share a little bit about what you all are experiencing in your individual areas, and also just to comment on, I love how uplifting you all are and how creative you all have been in terms of supporting the children in your areas and just keeping the eye on the prize, right? And it is very difficult to do at times. It's very selfless and tiresome work at times that you all are doing, and that is acknowledged. What success stories or, uplifting stories can you share just to help keep the energy going in times where people can feel a little bit like they're at a stopgap in terms of finding funds and getting creative?
Well, most of our success stories here in the district have been around the compensation piece, which is a legislative piece from DC Council that specifically has allocated funds that will go directly to educators. So this past year, and this has certainly put a little fuel in everybody's tank. So this past fiscal year, which was the 2022 fiscal year, sorry, we had $53 million allocated toward teacher compensation, and this was a direct payment to educators who worked in community-based centers and homes. And so and it was not based on credential, it mattered the level of education, only the role that the teacher or the assistant teacher had in the program. So all teachers received a $14,000 stipend, and assistants received $10,000. So, and so the payment was given out in September of 2022, and that was certainly a lift. It was a lift to the educators. It made them feel valued, seen, heard, and appreciated. And it also was a lift to programs, because some programs had used those ARPA funds or those COVID funds to retain their employees, because times were lean and things were tough. And so it also gave, it opened up a little bit funding so that programs didn't feel like they had to use that to retain their workforce or their employees. So that really was a total lift. And even though it wasn't dollars, it was dollars that came from the city, it still helped programs with the funding. And so one thing that I can't stress, and I hope everybody would take away, is that the funding will only, funding for programs cannot be done on the backs of parents. It has to be a publicly invested good. And so I'm just encouraging everyone who's on this call to just say, hey, these are, funding is important for my program for X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to go to my local legislators or my state legislators or even my representative in Congress to really advocate for what children need, because education should be the same or should be equitable for everyone, and not just because they have a certain zip code. And we know that technology helps children. We know that a competent, highly skilled, knowledgeable workforce helps to move children. And so these things are very important and really the bedrock and the foundation for really changing and improving outcomes for children. So if nothing else, allocate and ask for what you want. And, if you have to, we've camped out in front of the mayor's house, which, really got things moving. But certainly want to just encourage everyone to advocate.
Yeah, I cannot underscore what Kathy just said enough, especially being from Head Start. We go to DC every year and march the Hill. Head Start is very successful, and it's the longest running education grant in history. And we just got a huge reallocation of funding, and that happens because Head Start understands that education in the United States is a political field. So if you're in education, especially early childhood education, and you are not aware of your congressman, your councilman, your senator, you have to be, because your paycheck depends upon it. And the services that we're able to get for our children depend on the current administration and the current social and political climate. So the more you can get out there and show your children and show, we just had our brand new congressman come to one of my centers because I happened to trail him like a dog until he said yes, and he came. But the amazing thing that came from that is he said, oh my God, I had no idea this is what you do. The whole world should be like this. Look at all these different races and cultures, and everybody's a family and they love each other. He said, I can't, the world should be like this. And I was like, wouldn't that be great? So who do you have that that wants to give me some money, right? That's pretty much what, and the next time it comes, by the way, he's a Republican and would not be someone I would call a friend of Head Start, but he's a lot more friendly now. So politics is important in education. It just is.
So I'll just add my little piece. So maybe I'm not as knowledgeable about how to get the funds, but I know what to do once you have the funds. So whether you're trying to seek funds or spend funds, my biggest tip would be to always keep children in mind. That's the number one most important thing. So if you're making a decision and you're keeping the best interests of children in mind, then you can't go wrong. And that's all. That's short and sweet.
I love that so much, Becca, and that's such a great way to wrap this up, because honestly, that's really what we're all here for, right? That's why we are all doing what we're doing, because we care about children and getting them to be successful however we need to. I cannot thank you three enough for being here. I know everybody at Hatch is so proud to have you here speaking for us. Thank you, everybody that has attended, for being here. Please do know we will follow up with questions and answers. So please be on the lookout for that information. If you would like success stories, if you would like alignments, if you would like more information about the learning solutions that we offer, there are links in the chat, and we will also include those out. And I will be sure to include any links or email addresses that I'm permitted to share with you all in that follow-up document as well. Thank you again and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.